Welcome, busy gamers. Today we're going to be talking about Octopath Traveler 2. What's good, what's bad, and that all-important question, is it worth your time? If you've joined me for another worth your time video in the past, feel free to skip straight to the section you're most interested in, and if not, we're going to be heading right into the game's overview. So this game was developed and published by Square Enix, and Octopath Traveler 2 is the sequel to the extremely popular Octopath Traveler. It's an homage to JRPGs of the past, rendered beautifully as a 2.5-dimensional world and stylized with characters remaining pixelated. However, buildings, environments, and effects are fairly sharp and prominent. In this game, just like its predecessor, you take the role of 8 different adventurers who come together, but each still complete their own stories and goals. They're quite different, unique, and varied, and the entire game takes place in a land called Solistia. It's around their version of an industrial revolution during the game with the advent of steam-powered technologies. Unfortunately, this change hasn't brought peace, as much of the world is still rife with division and at times outright war. At the time of this review, I've spent about 60 hours with the game. I've constantly told myself that I wanted to or needed to reach just one more milestone, see one more chapter completed before I pinned my final verdict on the game. At present, I'm approaching or have completed the final phase of most of the character stories, but I have been distracted by side stories and exploration and will likely need approximately another 20 hours to fully complete this game. For the background footage today, I've intentionally chosen some earlier footage that would take place amid around the second chapter for most characters. That way I'm avoiding any large-scale spoilers to the final chapters of these characters. So what's good about Octopath Traveler 2? Well, let's start by talking briefly about the path actions. Each character has not one, but 2 unique path actions or special abilities that they can use to interact with NPCs in towns and throughout the world. One's available during the day, and the other is accessible only at night. These abilities can be used for a wide range of activities and are usually a core mechanic when solving your side quests. The Thief Throne, for example, can either steal by day or ambush by night. One allows you to acquire quest-related items or to generate additional income throughout the game. The second allows you to remove NPCs that might be a barrier keeping you from continuing along a path or entering specific buildings. They also did a really great job of not forcing you to constantly trade characters out just to receive these benefits. While the 2 I discussed are unique to the Thief, they're designed in a way that there is a slight overlap between skills for characters. The Warrior, for example, can challenge or duel people by daylight, which incapacitates them just like the Thief. Or the Apothecary can administer a sleeping medicine, ensuring that if you've created a diverse party, you can usually find a solution to whatever problem you're facing at the time. Alright, moving on to combat systems. Overall, the game has one of my favorite turn-based combat systems. Enemies are going to be entering battle with a set amount of shield, which can only be removed via break or weak points. Once this has been done, they're going to be taking a turn off from attacking you, and all of your attacks, even those they were not weak to initially, will get significant boosts for their damage. The boost meter in this game is also excellent and interacts well with the shield system. Each turn you're going to be filling one of 5 different boost meters, and it can turn those into boosts that affect any of your skills. On your basic attack, it gives a greater volume of strikes, therefore allowing you to strip more shields in a single turn. The balance of when and how you use this valuable resource is typically a fun puzzle that is central to your success in difficult battles. Combat is another area in which your characters get to stand out as unique as well. Even though jobs and classes can eventually be combined and shared, each core character still has latent powers that are unique to them and can be triggered during combat. The Warrior holds a shadow and rage deep within them that allows him to unleash it for a huge boost in damage, and the Cleric can use their power to strip shields no matter what the weaknesses are. Now let's talk about exploration. I hesitate to call this out too strongly, as overall most pathways are extremely linear and tight, with little to no additional area to explore. However, for those who pay attention to details on the maps and still attempt to wander off the beaten path, there are frequent chests, unique dungeons, and additional small secrets to uncover within the game. Maybe because of how rare this was, it did mean it felt really great when you noticed something, and it served well to break up the grinding nature of travel. One last minor thing before we head into talking about the story. I really enjoyed that the characters would congratulate each other on critical hits, armor breaks, etc. Hearing, "Good one, Hikari," or "Glad to have you on my side, Throne," really went a long way to making them feel like a team when honestly it felt like the team aspect was elsewise ignored throughout the game. I saved the story for last here because it's also on my list of what's bad as well. When the story is good, it's great, and the overall payoff for most characters' storylines are excellent, with bosses that are designed with a lot of heart and they have narrative flavor while still remaining pretty difficult and challenging. Usually, you can't balance those two things in a game, and they did it well here. The overall theme was one of the rejection of greed, and there were many moments that pulled strongly on my heartstrings and came off as somewhat poignant. While I don't want to go into a lot of spoiler territory here, I thought Timonos, Hikari, and Throne all really shined throughout their stories, and they kept me excited to trigger the next step of their journey. That being said, what's bad about Octopath Traveler 2? With that out the way, the story also had moments that were just actively bad, especially in Chapter 1. So many of the stories were extremely trite and generic to the point of frustration for me. I'm looking at Oswald here, who couldn't even talk during his trial in which he was accused of murdering his own family. As the stories advanced, they all improved, but it was still filled with pointless, time-consuming interludes, such as many of the crossed path events. For example, there's one called The Warrior and the Dancer. It took around 30 minutes, and it really contributed absolutely nothing other than a shared experience between the two characters. I'll admit that the game needs more effort put into connecting the party, but this really didn't achieve that goal in a metered way or material way. The issues with Chapter 1 starting out so slowly, I think, are going to mean that many people who come into the game and focus on gathering each of the base characters prior to moving on and advancing the stories are really going to have to power through what, in my opinion, is the worst part of the content the game has to offer. So I'll round out a short but frustrating list of bad here. It's just going to be the dreaded grind. It's a grind that's always associated with JRPGs. It's almost synonymous with the genre. And this particular game is a slow burn game with at least 60 hours of content if you focus on the main storyline. But that 60 hours is going to be largely filled with running back and forth to fight and kill enemies for experience and to fund your weapon and equipment upgrades. There's no method to share experience with party members not currently in your party, so you're going to frequently need to trade out members to keep them from falling behind and prepare for their next story chapter. Enemy spawns are frequent, and it would be more excusable if the travel from one place to another would be enough to generate experience required for the challenge. But especially in later chapters, the jump in levels needed for the story to go up go much faster than you will level with basic travel alone. Early in the game, I also went out of my way to get items to increase both the generation of my job points and the amount of gold I received. Even with those items, each of which are really not easily found or obtainable at low levels, the pacing still frustrated me, and between stories the game dragged along. Okay, let's go ahead and move to the ephemeral efficiencies. On this particular area, the game actually has three main areas of focus when it comes to letting you get your game going quickly and efficiently. The first one is the increased battle speed, and this one is a godsend for the game. It manages to speed battles up without making them feel stunted or clunky, and a 2x speed on something you're going to be spending a lot of time doing makes a huge difference. The second ability is the ability to autoplay or speed up the story content. This one, while efficient, does not really have enough options or tuning assigned to it. You'll likely be waiting to advance manually because the autoplay is tediously slow. but adding speed to it makes it harder to follow and read without a lot of focus. Really, they should have added some speeds in between the lightning fast and molasses levels. Now, the final addition, the third efficiency that they have going on for themselves, is the ability to skip early chapters when acquiring new characters. And I'm honestly pretty torn on this one. Acquiring the new characters can bog the game down, and it was one of my core complaints. However, you do lose all their starting resources and all of the initial context and setup for the core of their character. It doesn't give a summary of it, it just defers the entire first chapter of their play until later. All right, let's move on to the final scores. I think we've talked about this one enough. Overall, I'm going to give this game a 7. The game deserves a good score for what is ultimately excellent content, but it doesn't deserve a great score because of how gated that content is behind a grind that artificially bloats just how long the game needs to be. If you're a fan of the Octopath series or a fan of JRPGs in general, though, this is going to be one of the best of that style game if you've got the time to spare, and it doesn't require previous knowledge of the series to jump right in. On the Ephemeral Efficiency score, I'm honestly going to give this one a 4. With quite a few tools to specifically speed things up and make it more efficient, you would think the score here would be higher. But unfortunately, the grind and the poor implementation of many of the speed controls and options makes for a combination of a very poor score here. All right, that has been my review for Octopath Traveler 2. I hope you've enjoyed this particular content, and if you did, thank you very much for sticking to this point of the video. I really appreciate it. It helps me want to continue to make videos like this. So have a great time gaming, and I'll see you at the next video.